Because my weeks are rather repetitive, my daily journal has been feeling a little bit empty. I assume that the handwriting itself will fill in all the empty spaces after I decorate on a Monday, but it hasn't been lately. So this week I tried to fill up more space with decorating than I usually do. I've also rediscovered a Sashihara ink pad that I had. I think it's the 2024 color. They come out with special colors every year. I cannot remember if I bought it last year, the year before, or if it was earlier this year. But it's like a greeny grey color. So I used that as sort of the color inspiration for the palette. So classic Maddie, I'm just doing more green. Ari over at Moonbender Log on Instagram asked me about my ink pads and my ink pad journey. So I did want to talk about that really quickly because I have some thoughts. I've had a few different ink pads over the years. I've had the Memento Dewdrops, I've had the Versa Magic Chalk inks, I've had the Versa Fine ink pads, I have the Sashiharas. Is that how you say that? I'm going to butcher the Japanese names. I'm terribly sorry. The Sashihara ink pads and the most recently the Soramame? Again, I don't know. Ink pads. And they've all had good qualities, but I definitely have a favorite. When I first started my junk journaling specifically, I used the Memento Dewdrops. They were just really easy to find at my local craft stores here in Australia. So being able to physically find them easily, like just being able to go to Officeworks and just seeing one was, a really big contributor as to why I bought them. But as my stamp taste grew and refined, I found that they didn't cling to the finer details of the smaller stamps very well, or they would blur some of the details. So I ended up not using them, and I would give them away to friends who were first getting into the hobby and stuff, just to move them on because they clearly weren't working for what I enjoyed. The Versa Fines were really good for what they were supposed to do, but they were very, very, very juicy. And I think that they bled through a lot, so you had to stamp on a separate piece of paper and then put it into your journal, which is fine. I do that a lot now anyway, but I just didn't end up reaching for it as much because of that. So yeah, it just sort of sat in my drawers and kind of dried up because I just did not feel the need to use it when I had other safer, less juicy options. I remember when everybody was obsessed with the Versa Magic Chalk inks. They were my favorite for a really long time. I think the reason why I don't have them anymore is because at the time, Australia just did not have the refills. And by the time that they did have the refills easily accessible, I had moved on. So the ink pads just sort of sat in a drawer, dried to a crisp, and I probably just chucked them away during a move at the one time I have moved 100 times in the past. So yes, so that's the Versa Magic. I do recommend them. I do think they're absolutely stunning and they're really lovely, and you can get refills for them, which is so good. I think the qualms that I did have with them was very similar to the Memento Dewdrops, which is they didn't really cling to the delicate designs, or they flooded really easily, or like it pooled on the edges. However, that could also be because I am very heavy handed and I have only sort of just recently learnt to not jab an ink pad. You just have to lightly dab it. So there is a difference. So I think that I'm not the best comparison right now because I've learnt to be a little bit more gentle with the ink pads. You don't need to smack them so hard to get ink on them. So maybe the Versamagics are just as good as others. I just needed to learn to be less aggressive with them. The Soramame ink pads are definitely probably my favorite right now. I think probably definitely. I love how I say that. I really, really love them. I find that their colors are really beautiful. The experience is really nice. They seem to deal with details really well. I haven't had any qualms or I haven't been upset with them. I use them pretty exclusively these days. However, they don't have refills that I can see or find anywhere, and they only come in packs of 4. So if you like one color out of the 4-pack, you have to buy the entire 4-pack, and that drives me nuts. I'm already starting to run low on the black and the brown because a lot of the time I'm using just blacks and browns. I do try to use a variety of colors, but I don't always. And so yeah, I think that they really should release the refills soon. I think that would be really beneficial because yeah, having to go out and buy a whole pack just for 2 colors or just for 1 color even, to me is a little bit ridiculous, and I don't think personally, to me, I don't think that's worth it because I would end up having a horde of the discarded colors that I don't use because I do tend to gravitate towards the darker browns and the blacks. And the sashi hitters are reliable. They do their job. They come in nice colors, and they have refills, which is excellent. And I think they're easy to find. I'm pretty sure most of the shops that hold sashi hitters also hold the refills. So yes, I would recommend them over any other ink pads that I've ever used. They just know what they're doing. As weird as that is to say about an ink pad that you have to use. But no, I highly recommend them. And they come in 2 ink pad sizes. They come in the small travelers sort of style, like the really small square ink pads, and then they come in a larger rectangle one. I am gravitating more towards the small ink pads because just portability and space saving. They also stack, which is great. Love a stacking ink pad. So again, more space saving. So yeah, I think I would recommend those out of all of the other ink pads. I think they're great. I haven't had any issues with them bleeding too much, but that is also more to do with the paper that you use. But with the papers that I use, they're still pretty sweet. So yes, I would recommend the sashi hitters. And I know I'm probably saying that wrong, but yes, they are the favored workhorse on my desk at the very least. I hope that answered your questions, Ari. If you or anybody else has any questions, feel free to drop a comment or message me on Instagram. I do my best to answer them all, and I try my hardest to be as responsive as possible. I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. Let's hope that it'll be just as satisfying by Sunday afternoon.